So when we think about the role of an economic diplomat, we think about you sitting in a country that is kind of far away from your country. And you have to think about how you reach out and what materials you work with, and how you also reach back to your country for help, for assistance, and how you make connections between people who are in your country with the people back in your own home. Now, we're going to, in the next couple of weeks, have a couple of examples on how to do this. And the first one is Costa Rica, where we're going to look at an organization called Cinde. And Cinde was an interesting organization that emerged with the help of USAID in the 1980s, when the country produced really just bananas. Cinde helped to generate leads and connections and to facilitate readiness in the country so that they could move from bananas to garments. And part of that was involved luring a foreign business into the country. But garments is a place where a lot of countries get stuck. And the real achievement with Cinde was that when the garment industry started to slow down, that they managed to create another connection, and that connection with a company called Intel. And when they made the connection to Intel, they attracted Intel into the country, and Intel essentially completely transformed the production and the export performance of the country. Once Intel kind of wound up its operation in the last few years, people said, well, what's next? What's going to happen? And what you started to find out was that around Intel, they had developed a kind of a research triangle of all biotech firms and a bunch of other firms that were leveraging the knowledge that was around Intel and creating new things. And Intel decided to actually keep its knowledge hub in Costa Rica, even when it took manufacturing. Now, I can't imagine many countries that wouldn't like that to be the diversification story of their country, from bananas to microchips and beyond in 25 years. Pretty cool story. So how did it happen, and what was the role of the Attaché? The first thing is that the Attaché was actually a part of an organization called Cinde. And Cinde was a little bit like an economic development board type organization. And what Cinde did was it had connections with a lot of the ministries that are usually involved with providing the kinds of services and the kind of legislative context into which firms arrive in a country. So you would find that they had connections with the Ministry of Education, they had connections with the Ministry of Infrastructure, they had connections with the Ministry of Transportation, etc., etc. And so essentially you had people coming in and out of Cinde from these ministries for a period of time that could prepare the way for firms to come into the country. You similarly had Cinde communicating to the attachés, these are the kinds of industries that we want you to look at, and these are the kind of contacts that we want you to focus on. They managed to connect to one of their attachés who was sitting in the USA, and this attaché found out that there was a company called Intel that was looking to create a new manufacturing facility. The company, and most of you will know about Intel, is a very big multinational organization, and they essentially were looking at places like Brazil and Mexico, much bigger than Costa Rica. But what this person did was this person engaged with them many, many times and met with them and lured them and got them to essentially visit Costa Rica. And when they visited Costa Rica, they didn't just come on their own. They managed to connect backwards to the people in Cinde, and the people in Cinde managed to connect backwards to all the people in their ministries so that they could prepare the way whenever they came to the country. They could answer all their questions, and they could essentially fit the needs of the investor to the opportunities of the country. So there's something really interesting about the attaché, where you're sitting in the middle of a negotiation and a contact process between the people in your country and the companies you're trying to reach. So we'd like you to think a little bit about what kinds of capacities you need backwards, what kind of capacities you need linking forwards to be an effective economic attaché in your country.